Hey, what's up, guys? We got the SpartaDOS in. That's right, SpartaDOS X. I think this is actually version 4.19 if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, this is what we were talking about in the earlier video. It says here, supports, if you guys can read that or not, supports high speed at full capacities on the Indus GT 180K and the Atari XF551 360K. We don't have either one of those drives. We have the Atari 1050. I don't know if that's in view where you guys can see it, but we have the Atari 1050 with the US doubler chip inside of it. So that's what we're going to be using today for demonstration purposes. And I ordered some floppies. I got 50 some odd floppies for 50 bucks from floppydisk.com. So we're going to actually format a couple of those today, and let's go ahead and open the SpartaDOS and see what we get here. So we got the manual, SpartaDOS X. Looks like SpartaDOS 10, doesn't it, with that X there? Got the full manual. We got a fold out here. What does this say here? ICD Incorporated. 1220 Rock Street, Rockford, Illinois 61101. So a little piece of history right there. ICD Incorporated. Product warranty. Here we go. We got some changes in here to some of the commands that were. This looks like some kind of addendum to the manual, so we'll take a look at that after. Kind of cool. Says here, SpartaDOS X, the most powerful 8-bit disk operating system. I guess we're going to find out. Is that focusing? Yes. Okay. So anyway, this is actually a cartridge, guys, which I think is kind of cool. You see that? Focused. SpartaDOS X. And what's nice is this goes into the cartridge port of the Atari, and then they've got a little pass-through port up at the top of their cartridge where you can then plug in your cartridge, whatever cartridge, like for example, we've been using the editor assembler, so that editor assembler will plug into the top of the SpartaDOS cartridge, and then the SpartaDOS cartridge will then in turn go into the cartridge port of the Atari. So it kind of looks like that. All right. So anyway, here we go. We got the cartridge. You know, what's nice about having it on the cartridge too is that you just turn the computer on. You don't have to worry about waiting times for the disk to load up or the disk to go bad or trying to find the disk. Your DOS is always there and ready to go. You don't see very many of these. I don't think I've actually seen very many of these SpartaDOS or any type of DOS on a cartridge. You don't see that very often. So I'm glad to have it. I'm glad I found it. And let's go ahead and hook the Atari up and use this a little bit and see what we have. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this cartridge in. I'm also going to have the assembler editor cartridge plugged in because we're going to do a little testing with that as well. So let me readjust the camera so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire up the computer and let's see what we get when we first turn on the SpartaDOS. There we go. SpartaDOS X 4.2.0. Very cool. So what's nice about SpartaDOS, I was kind of looking through the manual a little bit here, is that if you're familiar with DOS, the disk operating system for Microsoft, the learning curve on this is going to be pretty quick, pretty short. Okay. A lot of the commands that SpartaDOS uses are the same commands that you'll see in MS-DOS. So for example, to get, well actually, you know what, before we do anything, let's take a disk and let's put it in the drive, and let's format it. All right, so I'm going to take a brand new unused disk here. Okay, I'm going to put it inside the Atari 1050 drive, close the door, and we're going to type format. Okay, now most of the stuff you do in SpartaDOS is done at the command line. There is a menu-driven system, which I'll show you after, but for right now, let's go ahead and just use the format command. And you can see it takes us to a menu that says ICD Disk Formatter. And let me just make sure that you guys can see this. Make sure you can see what I see. Okay. So we've got here the unit number. I've only got one drive, so I'm going to use drive 1. You can hit V for volume name. We're going to call this test. Press enter. Now here's where the ICD doubler shines, and you can see here where it says skew. And right now it's set to high speed. If you hit S, it'll go to standard, so you can switch between high speed and standard. We're going to do high speed, obviously. We want to get some speed out of this. Density here, you can do double, single, or dual. Okay. Now let's talk about that real quick, because I want to make sure that we understand what the difference is between those three options. So let me see if I can find the format command in the manual. I want to make sure that I do this correctly. So here we go. Okay, so density. All right. Maybe one of three types used with the Atari 8-bit computers. Single, 128 bytes per sector, dual, 128 bytes per sector, or double, 256 bytes per sector. Now the Atari 810s only support single density. The stock Atari 1050s support single and dual. Atari 1050s with the US doubler, which we have, or the Atari XF551s and the Indus GTs support all three densities. So we can do all three. So we're going to do double, and the mode is going to be either Atari or Sparta. So we're going to do Sparta. Number of tracks, we can do, let's read about tracks. Tracks can be 40 single-sided, 40 double-sided, 77 single-sided, 77 double-sided, 80 single-sided, and 80 double-sided. Well, that's a lot. So SS, obviously single-sided, it's one head writes on one side of the disk. Now I can tell you all Atari brand drives are going to use the 40 single-sided except for the XF551, which it's capable of 40 tracks dual-sided. So we're going to go ahead and choose 40 tracks single-sided, since our 1050 drive is only a single-sided drive. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of that. And you can see we're going to end up with 720 sectors and 184K roughly, 184,320 bytes. So let's go ahead and hit F, insert the disk, press enter. And it's formatting. You probably can't hear it on the video, but I can hear the drive spinning and I can hear the head moving for each one of the tracks that it's formatting. So this shouldn't take but maybe a couple seconds. We'll go ahead and speed the video up until it's finished. Oh, there it was. It actually finished before I got to do anything. So it wrote the directory and it completed. So we're going to go ahead and hit escape to get out of this. And let's type dir for directory. There you go. Here's our volume test, directory main, 713 free sectors. So let's try and do some of the commands in SpartaDOS, just so we can become a little bit more proficient at it. So we formatted a disk. That's cool. Let's actually go to basic. Let me show you how you can go to basic. Okay, so at the SpartaDOS command prompt, you just type basic. And since our 130XE has basic built into it, you can see here we're at the basic command line. So let's do a quick program. Let's write a quick program that's going to write out some bytes to a file, just so we can show how to save stuff to a drive. And I know we haven't covered this in any of our basic tutorials, but I will. But basically, I'm going to open up a file for write, and it's going to go to drive 1, We're going to call it test.dat. And I'm making sure everybody can still see this program that I'm typing here. Yes. Okay. Make sure we're not cut off there. All right. Let's set up a loop, and let's go from 0 to 255, which is going to basically write out 256 bytes. Let's use the put command to put a byte to the stream that we've opened. Let's go next X to finish with the loop, and then 50 will close our stream out. All right. So can everybody see that? Real simple program? Yes? Okay. Let me just get this a little bit better here. All right. Let's bring this up a little bit. All right. A little better? Yeah. Okay. So let's run this. I don't know if you can hear that beeping, but there we go. So now we should have a file on the disk called test.dat, and it should contain 256 characters, 0 to 255. Let's save our basic program, and the way that we do that is we use the save command in BASIC. We weren't able to do this before, but now we can do it. Save to drive 1, and let's call this test.bas. The BAS extension so that it denotes that it's a BASIC program. Okay, so now let's go back out to DOS. Now it says disk error while saving memory. Press escape to abort, return to enter DOS. And according to the manual, if you get this error message, don't panic. Just hit the return key. It simply means that you do not have enough memory in your computer to set up a default RAM disk. The memsave feature of SpartaDOS X attempted to save the program to this RAM disk, and it could not. It takes 128K on an Atari 800 and over 128K on an XL or XE computer to establish a default RAM disk. So we only have 128K stock on this 130XE, so we're not going to be able to take advantage of that, but that's fine. So now let's go ahead and type dir for directory of the disk, and you can see here we've got our test.dat file that we created, and we've got the test.bas, which is the basic file. So we actually now have some files on our disk, which is cool. So let's talk about the next feature of SpartaDOS that I want to go over, and that is setting the date and the time. So SpartaDOS allows you at the start of the session to set up the date and the time. So you do that by typing the command date, and it says, October 29, 1988, which is obviously wrong. So we're going to type in today's date, which is April 26, 2019. We're also going to type in time, which will allow us to set the time, and we're going to set the time for 12 o'clock. Okay? Now, the other nice thing you can do is you can change the date and time of the file. So let's do a directory again. You can see the date and time of the files is wrong. It's October 29th, 1988 at 2:04 p.m. The next command I'm going to show you is CHTD, which stands for change time and date. So let's do CHTD test.dat, press enter. Changing time and date in test.dat. Let's also do change time and date on test.bas. All right, now let's type dir, and there you go. Now we have the correct date and time for our files. It's kind of nice. Now, they also allow you, there's also a command called tdon, and you'll watch up here at the top of the screen what you'll see what it did. You see what it did? It put a label up top here. It says SpartaDOS 4.0, Monday the 26th, April 2019 at 12:59 p.m. So that's kind of cool. It gives us a running date and time at the top of our DOS session. Pretty cool. So the next command I want to show you is the copy command and how you can copy files. Let's make a copy of our test basic program. So we're going to type copy. Again, if you're familiar with MS-DOS, you can kind of see the pattern we're developing here. Let's do copy test.bas to test. I don't know, Let's create a backup of it. There we go. dir. And you can see carried over the attributes of it as far as the date and time as well. Pretty cool, right? Now, just as easily as we copied it, we could erase. So we can erase test.back. Good to go. Okay. Now, SpartaDOS also supports wildcards. Just like DOS, you can use the wildcard character question mark and the asterisk. Okay, so for example, you could do a directory of star.bas, and that will give you everything with the basic extension. Okay, you could also do a directory of te question mark .bas. That will give you it'll fill in the characters of anything that starts with TE. So the SpartaDOS supports wildcards. Very cool. You can also have directories on your drive. So just like DOS, you can create a directory, mkdir. We can call this directory temp. So mkdir temp. Okay. So if we do a directory now of our disk, we can see that we've got looks just like a DOS 2 directory called temp. So now we can combine these commands. We can do a copy test.dat into temp. And I believe the way you specify a directory is with the little greater than sign. That lets the SpartaDOS know that you're copying to a directory. All right, so there we go. So now we can do a change directory into temp. So now we're in the temp directory, and we get a directory of it, and we can see we've got a copy, directory temp, we've got a copy of our test.dat. Pretty neat. And excuse me, I believe it also supports the change directory command, like DOS, where you use your dot to get back one up directory. So you can do chdr, and you can also do cd. Very cool. Good stuff, right? I thought so. Now, if you've got a cartridge, let's talk about how you can get into the additional cartridge if you have it plugged into the SpartaDOS. So for example, I've got the assembler editor cartridge plugged into the SpartaDOS cartridge, and the way you do that is you type car. Basically, that'll change you over to the cartridge, and you can see here we're into our assembler editor. So let's go ahead and show how we can save programs from the assembler editor cartridge, which we weren't able to do the last time. So I'm going to recreate the program that we typed in last time, which basically just modified the accumulator. And one of the commenters commented last time that the CLC command, or the clear carry command, or instruction, I keep calling these commands the instructions, was actually left as a label, because I didn't use two spaces like this in the last time. So kudos to him for catching that. I forget who it was. I'll mention your name in the comments of this video as soon as I look back on it. But remember, two spaces when you're not using a label. Okay? Very important. So we're going to go here and we're going to load our accumulator with 0. And then line 40, we're going to set up a loop. And that's going to add to the accumulator with carry 1. We're going to compare that to if it's 3. We're going to branch, if it's not equal to 3, back to the loop. And I think we are done at this point. Clear the carry flag, load the accumulator with 0. We're going to start a loop. We're going to add 1, compare it to 3, branch back until that 3 is successful, and then we're going to end. So let's try and assemble this program. We get a success, and we know, of course, if we run it. Now, if we want to save this program, the way you save a listing, just like you list a program with the list command, you type list, and then you use the £, the D for disk, and then you can save your listing as, for example, test.asm. You can hear the little tweaking and twalking going on in the background. But basically what that's doing is it's going to write that out to the disk drive as an assembly language listing. Okay, So the way we get out of this is with X. Oh, excuse me. That's not how we get out of it. How do we get out of this? Good question. I think we type DOS. There we go. So now we're back in DOS. Let's type a directory of our drive, and we can see our test.asm, 83 bytes. Cool. So now we can actually save our assembly language programs. Imagine that. So let me show you the menu system that's built into... Oh, actually, before I do that, let's talk about the list of commands that are in SpartaDOS that have the equivalent of Atari DOS. So we did dir, right? We talked about that. We talked about basic, oops, which takes you to the basic built in. Okay. Copy, we talked about that, copying files. Erase, we talked about that, erasing files. One thing we didn't talk about is rename. You can either use the full rename or you can use REN. So for example, we can rename test.dat to test.xxx. Okay, let's go ahead and rename that back to what it was. Okay. There's an attribute command, ATR, and you can use the plus P to lock a file, and you can use the -P to unlock a file. Okay. The format command, we did that already to format the disk. To duplicate disk, you can use the copy command, which we'll go over that shortly here. You can do a binary save with the word save. You can do a binary load with the word load. So let's go in. Let's talk about the menu now. Let's type menu. So this is kind of a menu system that's built into SpartaDOS, and you can see down here at the bottom we've got the copy command, the delete command, the file spec, log, print, rename, tag, untag, view. So for example, let's see if I remember how to do this now. Let's take a look at the test.basic. Let's hit the V to view that file, and you can see what it did was it basically views the files on the screen. Okay, as basically the raw characters as it's saved on the file. Press any key to continue. Okay, so the enter key changes between the directory and the file view. So if I press enter, now when I hit my arrow keys, I'm up at the top where I'm either at the root of the A drive or I'm down in the temp directory. See how that's working? So now I'm in the temp directory, arrow up, and now I'm at the root. If I press the enter key, now I'm actually down here where I can actually arrow through the individual files. So in other words, you can either be at the directory level or the file level when you're dealing with the menu. So for example, if I wanted to rename test.asm, I would basically move the cursor to it and then click R to rename. And it says rename test.asm to what? Test.xxx. And now it's renamed. You can see it updated right there. So let's rename it back. Press enter. Okay. You can also tag files with the T command. So when you T it, you see it gets the little triangle or the heart, whatever that is, symbol next to it. So you hit T, T, T. You can tag or you can actually hit U to untag individual files. So for example, we could just now the way you would want to delete multiple files is you would tag, 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 and then you would press D for delete, and it's going to ask you to confirm, do you want to delete this file or files is what it should say. And it should delete all those files, but we're going to hit escape. We're not going to delete them. Same thing for copying. Let's say you wanted to copy the test.asm file. You press C for copy, and it gives you destination drive. Let's see what happens when we do it to itself. Oh, insert the destination disk. Well, we don't want to do that. So we're going to cancel that out. Log, not really sure what that does. File spec. Not sure what that does. Probably have to read up on that. P for print. Press any key when the paper is ready. So a little bit of a cool menu system going on here. If you feel more at home using the menu system to go between directories and files. But we're going to go ahead and get out of this directory system for now. And the way we do that is we hit escape, and we hit Q. Get us back to the command line. So what else can we do with SpartaDOS? let's take a look and see if the manual here has anything more pertinent for us to know. The command line length is 63 characters. It doesn't warn you when you exceed that, so that might be something kind of cool to know. Device handlers. So D is for drive, C is for cassettes, P is for printers. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. What else is important to know here? Oh, SpartaDOS has no problem reading from and writing to disk formatted and used with SpartaDOS 2.x and 3.x. It can also use a disk formatted with SpartaDOS 1.1. So that's good to know. We talked about SpartaDOS cartridge being a piggyback cartridge. We know about that. So how about the command processor? Anything important we need to know about that? Let's see. No. So let's talk about some of the commands that we didn't go over. So the arch command, or the archive command, allows you to create and maintain archive files. Okay. So it's kind of like what the old days of, or what we call today zip. Back in the day they were using the arch command. All right. I guess you're going to do some compression and you're going to squeeze some files together. That's something you might want to use. The attribute command, I mentioned that. That allows you to change the attributes of a file. So basically, you can do hidden and unhidden for directories. You can do protect and unprotect. Probably won't be doing very much of that. The basic command gets you in and out of base, or gets you into basic. I think we talked about that. What else can we do? Boot. This tells the SpartaDOS formatted disk to boot a particular program at startup. Okay, that's cool. So you can actually type the boot command, and the drive letter and the file name and the extension of the file, and basically the DOS loader and the first three sectors of each SpartaDOS formatted diskette version 2 and above can load and run files in the same manner as a command file. Normally DOS is loaded, but anything can be loaded. Okay. We'll have to test that out when we get some actual games and stuff like that, which I don't have right now. I'm waiting for my SIO to USB to arrive so we can actually do some of that. So we talked about the car command that gets us into the cartridge, as we just did with the assembler editor. We talked about the change directory command, which actually allows us to change directories. Check disk. This is another one of those IBM MS-DOS compatible commands. Let's do check disk and see what happens. So check disk basically gives us some information about the disk, the volume name, the bytes per sector, total bytes that the disk used or is available to use, and then the bytes free on the current disk. Use to quickly see how much space is available. So that's probably going to be a handy command we're going to use a lot. Okay. We talked about the change time and date command. All right. Here's one that's kind of cool. How about changing the volume name? So we can change the volume name. I think we have to use this with some parameters. We can do, let's change the volume name to test X. So I figured out what I did wrong. It just took a long time to get back to tell me that. That's better. Now if we do a check this, we can see that we renamed the volume to test X. Okay, so I guess that helps. All right, moving on. The cold command. This command reboots the system by doing a jump to hex E477. It's an alternative to switching the computer's power off and on. Let's see. Hey, it works. There we go. All right, so now we know what the cold command does. All right, moving on. Copy command. We talked about that, so we know what that does. And is there anything else in here that's good? We talked about the date. We talked about the directory command, obviously. Let's talk about the dump command. The dump command displays a file in hex. Let's dump test.dat. So that's kind of cool. Those are those 256 characters we wrote. And you can see it dumps it out almost like a hex editor. It's pretty nice. So dump is useful to quickly examine the contents of a file. To modify a file or modify the disk sectors, use disk RX from the SpartaDOS toolkit. If anybody has that, let me know. I'd like to get a copy of that from you. The erase command we went over, that allows you to erase a file. Find files. I guess if you've got a lot of files, you can use find. I can't imagine having enough files where I would have to actually do a find. But I guess find works. It tells you what drive it's on. It does a search. It'll search all your drives, actually. Let's see. What else? Load command. Loads a file but does not run it. Useful for keeping commonly used commands resident in memory. So I guess if you've got a lot of COM files, maybe some stuff you develop with the assembler editor, you can load it into memory and prior to debugging it, I guess, or prior to running it. So maybe we'll use that a little bit in the future. The mem command, that basically displays the current low memory limits of your system and the number of available banks of windowed RAM. Okay, good to know. Menu, we talked about that. That basically gets us into our menu system, which then we can use from there. I personally like being at the command line. Make directory, we talked about what that does. Pause command, suspend system processing and displays the message, press return to continue. Really don't know. Oh, I guess you have the ability to create batch files with SpartaDOS, and you can use the pause command with a batch file to provide the opportunity to change diskettes between commands or to step through a process. Okay, so that's cool. Maybe a little bit later we'll do some of that. There's actually a peek command. So this is kind of cool. You can actually peek a memory location within the SpartaDOS. And I guess they also support the alternative command, which is the poke, where you can actually change values of memory from the command processor. So that's kind of neat. Let's try doing that one we used in our basic program of the left column. Or the left margin, there you go. So we just changed the left margin to 0. I kind of like it that way anyway. Maybe I'll just leave it at 0. Prompt, set the system prompt. So you can do a prompt, space the prompt string. The text in the prompt string is taken by SpartaDOS to be the new system prompt. So we can use special meta strings and we can embed those in the texts in the form $C, where C is one of the following characters. So let's change the prompt. Let's go prompt quote $, P, print the current drive. Okay, so what did that do? P will cause the current drive to be read every time the return key is pressed. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know if I wanted that. Oh, I see. I did that wrong. Let's try prompt $L, which will print the current drive letter. And then we can do a colon like they have. And then we can do a $P, which does the path in the current drive. Okay, I like that a little bit better. That's almost MS-DOS-like. So now instead of showing that D1, we've got the A colon. So let's change that back. Let's do N. Oops, prompt, spelled that wrong. Prompt $N. Okay, so that gives us N for the 1. Let's do prompt $P, $N. Okay, but why didn't the P is supposed to, oh, the current path. Let's do prompt $L, which is the current drive letter, $N. Okay, so that brings us back to the A1. So how do we get it back to the stock D? I guess we could just do prompt, and then we do $n, and then a colon. There we go. So D is whatever you, if you don't specify the $, it prints whatever's there. So I could go prompt, my prompt, and then I could do $n, and it will say my prompt D1. Okay, that's kind of cool. So you can customize the prompt. I'll put it back to what it is in stock version. So $n, colon. There we go. So the other option is you can use a D for print the current date, T for the current time, and you can do an R, print of end of line character, which advances to the next line. So anyway, you can specify a couple things for the prompt there. We talked about the rename or the REN for renaming files. You can remove a directory. Let's try that. Let's do rmdir, and let's do temp. Let's see if we can remove that directory. Can't delete the directory. I would assume it's because that directory needs to be empty. So let's change into temp. Let's erase test.dat. So now our directory is empty. Let's change back one level up. And now let's try and do rmdir temp. There we go. So now to remove, remember that to remove a directory, it must be empty. Good to know. I wonder if there's a way to force that. I'll have to look a little bit deeper into that and see. What else do we got? We've got a set command for setting environment variables, which I'm not going to get into that right now. Swap drives. Swap allows you to swap or remap your drive configuration. So swap without any parameters will display the drive map. So let's do swap. So D1 is drive 1, D2 is drive 2, and D3 is drive 3, and so on. So if we did a swap, let's say swap 1, 2, that should swap drives 1 and 2, and it does. So if we reference D1, we'll actually be accessing drive 2, and if we reference D2, we actually be accessing drive 1. I don't really know what the use of that is, but put those back for now. Obviously, that swapping will not stay remapped after a cold start, so keep that in mind. The time display on or off, we talked about that. If you do TD on, you get the time and date displayed at the top. You can do a TD off. You can turn that off. I don't mind having it on. It's kind of cool. Let's see, what else? What else do we got here? Time command we talked about. The type command, that's another command that's MS-DOS-like. This command displays the contents of a specific file. So if we do type test.asm, that should give us the text version of our assembler program. Kind of cool. Let's see what the basic program looks like. Probably going to see some weird characters there. Yeah, because it's saved with an encoding. It's not just straight ASCII or a TASCII. Right. All right, that's the type command. We've got the uneraser command. So if we do erase test.dat, that actually erases the file. And as long as we don't write to the disk, we should be able to go unerase test.dat. Restore test.dat. Well, that's kind of cool. So if you accidentally erase a file and you don't write a bunch of information to the disk, you can unerase a file. Neato. All right, verify. Apparently, there is a verify command that you can use to turn write verify on or off. When on, SpartaDOS performs a verify operation following each disk write operation. It's off by default, obviously for speed purposes, so we're going to leave that alone. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else important? I think we've pretty much covered most of what we're going to need to learn about SpartaDOS in order to get this thing functioning. So there you go. There's your first look SpartaDOS X. And like I said, the cool thing about it is it's in a cartridge, so we don't have to worry about loading disks every time we want to get into the computer and do some disk operations. As long as we have that cartridge there, we're good to go. We can read and write, we can format disks, we can copy files, and we can do all that good stuff. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We're going to do some more videos on SpartaDOS as I become more familiar with it, and if I find information that's important for you to know. That's it for today. See you in the next video, and please like and subscribe and give me some feedback on if you like what I'm doing or if you don't like what I'm doing. Take care.